The sound came first. A soft hum, low, steady, wrong. In a house this expensive, silence was expected, obedient, controlled. But that hum didn't belong, and Victoria Langford felt it before she understood it. She stopped at the top of the stairs, one heel hanging in the air, her fingers tightening around her phone. The glass walls of her home office caught the afternoon light, and through them she saw the shape of someone sitting at her desk. Her desk. A figure framed by wealth and power that was never meant for them. It was Naomi, the maid, the woman Victoria passed every morning without looking at her face. The woman who moved quietly through hallways like furniture. The woman whose name, Victoria, only remembered when something went wrong. Naomi sat straight-backed in the leather chair, her hands moving across the keyboard with calm intention. Not rushed, not sneaky, focused. Like she belonged there, like the space had accepted her. Victoria's chest tightened, heat rose up her neck. Rage arrived fast and familiar, the kind that came when boundaries were crossed by people who were never supposed to have any. "What do you think you're doing?" Her voice sliced through the open space, sharp and loud, breaking the hum like shattered glass. Naomi froze. The typing stopped. For a brief moment, she didn't turn around. She simply sat there, hands resting on the desk, shoulders stiff. Then she stood slowly, as if sudden movement might make things worse. When she turned, her eyes lifted to Victoria's face. They didn't beg. They didn't dart around the room looking for escape. They just looked tired. "I was just finishing something," Naomi said. Her voice was quiet, but it didn't shake. That only made it worse. Victoria descended the stairs in long, angry strides, each heel striking the marble floor like a warning shot. The house seemed to echo her anger back at her. She reached the desk and grabbed the laptop, pulling it toward herself with force, already building the story in her mind. Theft, snooping, invasion. Another reminder that no matter how much she paid people, they never knew their place. "You people always cross lines," Victoria snapped, loud enough to fill every corner of the mansion. The words came easily, too easily. "Do you have any idea what this laptop costs? It's more than your yearly salary." Naomi's throat moved as she swallowed. Her hands folded in front of her, fingers pressing together like she was holding herself in place. The air between them thickened, heavy with unspoken history and unequal power. "I didn't mean any harm," Naomi said. "You weren't home." Victoria let out a short, cold laugh. It held no humor, only judgment. "So that makes it okay?" she said. "So when I'm gone, you just help yourself to whatever you want." Naomi opened her mouth, then closed it. She looked down for half a second, then back up. "I wasn't helping myself," she said softly. Victoria didn't hear the softness. She heard challenge. She flipped the laptop open with a sharp motion, her finger already hovering over the trackpad. Security was one tap away, one call, and this would be handled the way these things always were. Quietly, quickly, without consequences for her. She was ready to expose whatever excuse Naomi had tried to hide behind. Emails, social media, maybe pictures of her house sent to strangers. Something ugly, something simple. Then the screen came into focus. Victoria's finger froze. It wasn't an inbox. It wasn't a browser full of random tabs. It was a dashboard. Clean, organized, complex. Charts stretched across the screen. Lines rising and falling in sharp colors. Legal documents sat open beside them, marked with digital notes. A paused video conference filled one corner. Frozen on the face of a man Victoria recognized immediately. Her CFO. Victoria leaned in without realizing she was doing it. Her breath slowed, then caught. Names jumped out at her. Subsidiaries, shell companies, accounts she knew by heart. Corporations she owned, controlled, and protected with entire teams of lawyers. And at the top of the document, bold and unmistakable, were words she had never seen written so plainly. Langford Holdings, internal risk exposure. The room tilted. For a moment, Victoria forgot to breathe. Her mind raced, trying to make sense of what her eyes were telling her. This wasn't gossip. This wasn't speculation. These were internal terms, language used behind closed doors, numbers that didn't live in public reports. Her grip tightened on the laptop as if it might slip away, as if this information might vanish if she blinked too long. Behind her, Naomi stood perfectly still. Victoria straightened slowly. Her heart thudded hard against her ribs. "What is this?" she asked. Her voice came out lower now, quieter. That scared her more than shouting ever could. Naomi hesitated, just for a breath. Then she spoke. "It's an analysis." Victoria laughed again, but this time the sound cracked halfway through. "Don't lie to me," she said. "You don't even know what you're looking at." Naomi met her eyes. "I do." The word landed heavy. Victoria scrolled. Page after page revealed things she thought were buried, risks she had dismissed, patterns she had ignored because they came from people she paid not to question her. Every scroll felt like a small betrayal, not by Naomi, but by the walls she had built around herself. Her world, so carefully controlled, felt suddenly thin. The maid she thought she owned was standing a few feet away, watching her face change in real time. "You had no right," Victoria said, but the certainty was gone now. It sounded more like she was trying to convince herself. Naomi's voice came again, steady but trembling beneath the surface. "You weren't supposed to see it like this." Victoria looked up sharply. "Then how was I supposed to see it?" she demanded. Naomi didn't answer right away. Her eyes dropped to the floor, then lifted again, filled with something that wasn't fear. It was something closer to regret, or resolve. "I was going to tell you," she said. Silence flooded the room, thick, pressing. The hum of the laptop felt louder now, like a countdown. Victoria stared at Naomi, really stared at her for the first time, at the way she stood, at the calm that hadn't broken even when the insults flew, at the intelligence in her eyes that Victoria had never bothered to notice. Nothing made sense anymore. Outside, the sun dipped lower, casting long shadows across the glass walls. Inside, two women stood on opposite sides of a desk that had suddenly become a battlefield, one built on wealth and assumption, the other on quiet knowledge and restraint. Victoria opened her mouth to speak again, but no words came out. Whatever this was, it was bigger than disrespect, bigger than rules being broken. And deep down, where pride and fear collide, Victoria felt the first sharp edge of a truth she wasn't ready to face yet. This wasn't about a maid using a laptop. This was about power slipping through her fingers, and she had no idea what Naomi was going to do next. Victoria slammed the laptop shut so hard the sound echoed through the glass office like a gunshot. The hum died instantly. Silence rushed in. Her hands were shaking, but not from fear. This was fury, pure and sharp and burning in her chest. "You hacked me?" she snapped, her voice tight, controlled, dangerous. "You stole confidential data?" Naomi didn't move at first. Then slowly, carefully, she raised her hands, palms open, the way someone does when standing too close to something that can hurt them. Her breathing stayed even, but her shoulders were tense, braced for impact. "No," she said. "I accessed public filings, court records, market data. I cross-referenced patterns. I didn't break into anything." Victoria let out a short laugh that held no humor. "Don't insult my intelligence," she said, waving the laptop like a weapon. "You expect me to believe this just fell into your lap?" She turned away and began pacing the room, heels clicking sharply against the marble floor. She dialed her assistant, straight to voicemail. She hung up and dialed again, slower this time, as if patience might change the result. Nothing. Then her lawyer. One ring, two, voicemail again. Each unanswered call tightened something inside her chest. The silence felt wrong, too timed, too quiet, like the house itself was holding its breath. She spun back toward Naomi. "You clean my floors," Victoria said, each word coated in venom. "You scrub my bathrooms. You don't analyze corporations." Naomi flinched. It was quick, almost invisible, but it was there. Still, she didn't look away. "I do both," she said quietly. That answer hit harder than any insult could have. Victoria stepped closer, invading Naomi's space, towering over her. You think because you watched a few YouTube videos you're suddenly what? She demanded. An analyst? A strategist? Don't be ridiculous. Naomi's eyes shimmered now, the calm beginning to crack, but her voice stayed steady. I went to Stanford, she said. Top of my class. Economics and data science. The room went still. Then Victoria laughed, loud, sharp, dismissive. Stanford, she repeated, like the word itself was a joke. And now you mop floors? Naomi nodded once. The movement was small, heavy. Because student debt doesn't care about degrees, she said. And interviews don't care about names. Victoria opened her mouth to fire back, but nothing came out. Something in Naomi's tone had shifted. There was no bitterness in it, no begging, just truth, flat and unpolished. Victoria looked down at the laptop in her hands. Slowly she opened it again. The screen lit up the room with its cold glow. She scrolled, once, twice, then faster. Her eyes moved quickly now, scanning charts, graphs, notes. Her breath shortened with every page. These weren't guesses. These weren't vague theories. These were projections built on patterns she recognized. Cash flow leaks hidden under polished reports. Subsidiaries bleeding money. Legal exposure tied to decisions she had signed off on without question. And beneath it all, a timeline. A quiet countdown towards something she had tried very hard not to think about. A federal investigation. Her fingers tightened around the edge of the laptop. She hadn't even told her board about that risk yet. Only 2 lawyers knew, 3 maybe. And now Naomi was standing in front of her, watching her face fall apart piece by piece. You've been spying on me, Victoria whispered. The word sounded smaller than she wanted it to. Weaker. No, Naomi said. I was trying to protect you. Victoria's head snapped up. Protect me? Her voice rose, sharp again, grasping for control. You had no right, no permission. You crossed every boundary. Naomi's hands lowered slowly back to her sides. I tried to tell people, she said. Your assistant, your CFO. I sent emails. I left messages. No one responded. Because your staff, Victoria shot back. Because that's not your place. The words hung between them, heavy and ugly. Victoria felt it then. The shift, the power that usually sat so comfortably on her shoulders, suddenly felt unstable. Slippery. She straightened her posture, grasping at authority the way she always had. I can call the police, she said. I can have you arrested. I can sue you into nothing. Naomi didn't react. She didn't argue. She just stood there, quiet, letting the threats wash over her. I can have you deported, Victoria added, her voice sharper now, louder, trying to drown out the doubt creeping in. Naomi finally spoke. I was born in Chicago. That stopped her. Victoria stared at her, searching for something to throw back, something to regain ground. Nothing came. She glanced down at the screen again, at the clean logic of the analysis, the careful notes written in language too precise to dismiss. Every threat she had just made sounded hollow now. Weak, because power is loud when it's built on assumption. But truth doesn't need to shout. It just sits there, patient, waiting to be seen. Victoria closed the laptop slowly this time, not in anger, in thought. You think this makes you important, she said finally, quieter. You think this gives you leverage? Naomi shook her head. I think it gives you a chance. The words landed heavy. Victoria turned away, walking to the glass wall and staring out at the city below. From this height, people looked small. Cars moved like toys. It was a view she loved because it reminded her how far above she stood. But now, with Naomi's analysis burning in her mind, the view felt different, fragile, like it could all shatter with one wrong move. Behind her, Naomi waited, silent, respectful, the same way she always had. Victoria realized something then that made her stomach tighten. Naomi hadn't raised her voice once, hadn't begged, hadn't apologized for being smart in a room that didn't expect it. For the first time, Victoria felt exposed, not because someone had stolen from her, but because someone she had never seen had seen right through her. She turned back slowly, meeting Naomi's eyes. There was tension there, unfinished business, a question neither of them was ready to ask out loud. The house was quiet again, too quiet. And somewhere between the threats and the truth, Victoria knew this moment wasn't over. It was only escalating. The phone finally vibrated in Victoria's hand, sharp and sudden, like it had been waiting for the perfect moment to strike. She looked down at the screen and saw her lawyer's name. Her chest tightened. She answered without greeting, her eyes never leaving Naomi. "I need you to listen," Victoria said, already opening the laptop again. Her voice sounded different now, lower, controlled. She read one paragraph from Naomi's report, just one. Clean numbers, clear language, no emotion, just truth. There was silence on the other end of the line, not the kind filled with confusion, the kind filled with recognition. Then the lawyer spoke, slowly, carefully. "Where did you get this?" Victoria swallowed. Her gaze shifted to Naomi, who stood a few feet away, hands folded, eyes downcast but alert. Victoria felt something twist in her stomach. "She's my maid," she said. Another pause followed, longer this time, heavy, the kind that makes your skin prickle. Then the lawyer said something Victoria had never expected to hear. "Then you should listen to her." The words landed like a blow. Victoria pulled the phone away from her ear and stared at it, as if it had betrayed her. The room felt smaller suddenly. The glass walls closed in. The air grew thick. She ended the call without another word. For a long moment, neither woman spoke. Victoria turned slowly. She looked at Naomi again, but this time, something had changed. Naomi wasn't just staff anymore. She wasn't background noise. She wasn't invisible. She was standing in the center of the room like a question that could no longer be ignored. "You knew," Victoria said finally. Her voice was quiet now, dangerous in a different way. "You knew my company was about to collapse." Naomi nodded. The movement was small, honest. And then the tears came. Not loud, not dramatic. They slipped down her cheeks like they had been waiting for permission. "I tried to warn them," she said. "Your assistant, your CFO, I sent emails. I brought printed reports. No one returned my messages." Victoria felt the words hit her chest one by one, each one heavier than the last. She had built layers of protection around herself. Assistants, executives, titles, doors that only opened for certain people, and Naomi had been locked outside every one of them. "Why?" Victoria asked. The question escaped before she could stop it. "Why help me?" Naomi wiped her face with the back of her hand, embarrassed but not ashamed. Her voice cracked when she answered. "Because if Langford Holdings falls, thousands of people lose their jobs. People like me, people who don't have savings, people who can't afford to wait for the next opportunity." Victoria felt something give way inside her. She turned and sat down hard in the leather chair behind the desk, the same chair Naomi had been sitting in earlier, the same place Victoria had thought was being violated. Now it felt like the only place she could breathe. For the first time in a very long time, pride didn't rush in to save her. Shame arrived first, heavy, unavoidable. Naomi stepped forward slowly and opened the laptop again. This time, she did it gently, like the machine was fragile. "I built a model," she said. "It's not perfect. But if you divest now, restructure these assets, and cut ties with these subsidiaries, you can survive." She turned the screen toward Victoria. Victoria watched, really watched. Naomi's fingers moved with confidence. She explained each decision in clear language. No jargon, no ego, just logic, cause and effect, risk and response. She answered questions before Victoria could ask them. This wasn't a maid pretending to be smart. This was a strategist buried under years of being ignored. Victoria felt the power in the room shift, not with noise, not with drama, quietly, like a tide turning while no one is watching. Everything she thought she understood about control felt unstable now. "You should hate me," Victoria said suddenly. Naomi paused. "Why?" "For how I spoke to you," Victoria said. "For what I assumed." Naomi didn't answer right away. She looked at Victoria, really looked at her, and Victoria felt exposed in a way she never had before. Finally, Naomi said, "I don't hate you. I just didn't expect you to listen." That hurt more than anger ever could. Victoria leaned back in the chair, staring at the ceiling. All her life she had been praised for her instincts, for her strength, for knowing who mattered. But in this room with this woman, all of that felt hollow. She had spent years stepping over people without ever looking down, and now the person she had overlooked had just saved her entire world. "You weren't stealing," Victoria said quietly. Naomi shook her head. "No, you weren't spying. No." Victoria let out a long breath. "You were protecting something I didn't even know I was about to lose." Naomi nodded again. Silence settled between them, not hostile, not tense, reflective, the kind that changes things. Victoria stood up slowly and walked around the desk. She stopped in front of Naomi. There was no anger in her face now, just something close to fear and respect. "I don't know what happens next," Victoria said. Naomi met her eyes. "Neither do I." But they both knew one thing had already changed. Victoria hadn't caught Naomi stealing. She had caught her saving everything. And as the sun dipped lower outside the glass walls, casting long shadows across the room, Victoria realized the most terrifying truth of all. If Naomi hadn't sat at that desk when she did, Langford Holdings would already be falling apart. Power hadn't been taken from Victoria that day. It had been revealed. And once you see the truth, you can never unsee it. 3 months can feel like a lifetime when everything you built is on the line. For Langford Holdings, those 3 months rewrote the story people thought they already knew. Headlines flashed across screens. Numbers climbed where they were supposed to fall. Lawsuits quietly disappeared. Risk softened. Stability returned. Analysts called it miraculous. A comeback no one saw coming. Victoria Langford called it Naomi. The press conference room was packed wall to wall. Cameras clicked non-stop. Microphones crowded the podium like eager mouths waiting to be fed. Victoria stood there polished and composed, wearing the same confidence the world had always rewarded her for. But something was different now. Her posture wasn't stiff with superiority. It was grounded, deliberate, like someone who had learned the cost of standing too tall on other people's backs. She cleared her throat and the room settled. "Thank you all for coming," she said, her voice calm, measured. She spoke briefly about strategy, about restructuring, about lessons learned. The words sounded professional, safe. Then she paused. The pause stretched just long enough to make people lean in. "I'd like to introduce our newest senior risk advisor," Victoria said. She stepped to the side. Naomi walked forward. There was no uniform, no apron, no quiet steps meant to go unnoticed. She wore a tailored suit that fit her like it had always been hers. Her shoulders were back. Her head was high. She didn't rush. She didn't hesitate. She stood where she belonged and let the room take her in. The murmurs started immediately, soft at first, then louder. Confused glances, quick whispers. Some faces showed surprise, others disbelief. A few recognized her name from the reports that had circulated after the recovery, but many didn't. They were still trying to match this woman to whatever box they had already built in their minds. The maid was gone. The woman remained. Naomi stepped up to the podium, her hands steady as she spoke. She didn't boast. She didn't explain herself. She didn't need to. The numbers had already done that. The silence in the room shifted from judgment to attention, from doubt to respect. Victoria watched from the side. For the first time, she wasn't the center of the story, and she didn't feel diminished by it. She felt relieved. After the cameras shut off and the room emptied, the building returned to its quiet hum, the kind that comes from work being done instead of power being displayed. Victoria walked back into her office, the same one where everything had unraveled months before. Naomi followed. They stood there for a moment, the door closed behind them. No audience, no microphones, just two women and the weight of everything that had passed between them. Victoria hesitated. That hesitation said more than any speech ever could. "I was wrong," she said finally. The words were simple, bare, about everything. Naomi nodded once. She didn't smile. She didn't rush to make Victoria feel better. Apologies don't erase scars. They acknowledge them. And sometimes that has to be enough. Victoria swallowed and extended her hand. Not like a boss sealing a deal. Not like a billionaire offering a reward. But like a human being asking to be seen the same way she was finally learning to see others. Naomi looked at the hand for a brief second, then took it. The handshake was firm, equal, real. That night, long after the building emptied and the city lights flickered on, Victoria sat alone in her office. The desk was the same one where she had once felt violated, the same place she had stood in anger and fear. Now it felt different, smaller, honest. She rested her hands on the smooth surface and stared at the spot where Naomi's laptop had once sat. The moment replayed in her mind, the assumptions, the words she could never take back, the way she had confused authority with intelligence, loudness with value. No amount of money had taught her what that moment did. She thought about how many people she had walked past without looking at, how many voices she had silenced simply by not listening, how many truths she had missed because they came from places she didn't respect. Wealth had given her comfort, power had given her control, but neither had given her wisdom. That came later, from a woman she almost destroyed because she didn't fit the image of what importance was supposed to look like. Victoria leaned back in her chair and closed her eyes. She understood now that dignity doesn't come from titles, respect doesn't come from volume, and intelligence doesn't ask permission before showing up. Never mistake someone's position for their worth. Never confuse silence with ignorance. And never assume power belongs only to those who speak the loudest, because sometimes the person you overlook is the one holding the truth that can save you. And sometimes the greatest transformation isn't in the numbers on a balance sheet, but in the way you finally learn to see the people standing right in front of you,